In 1928, Sir Henry Fowler was working on simultaneously revolutionizing and standardizing the motive power on the LMS. He'd have 3 classes making their debut this year, the goal being to assure smoother running and cheaper maintenance as a whole. The 2F dock tanks, of which there would only be 10, the Royal Scots, a Fowler design based off of the Southern Railway's Lord Nelson's, made for the heaviest expresses of the time. These would be rebuilt and in that form proved capable of matching Pacifics. The third of these designs would be today's subject, the 2P. 2P being the power classification and purpose. Why make more than one class of locomotive for a power classification if you can make one really good one? Now, the 2Ps were 440s made for secondary passenger service. They were a development of the previous Midland Railway 483 class by Samuel Waite Johnson, which were themselves renewals of his Class 2, meaning they were more or less new-built locomotives, which took a few bits off of the old ones. The Class 2s were actually several classes of locomotives to vaguely similar designs. The 483s were made for secondary services and proved quite effective in this role, earning rebuilds, and all surviving into British Railways. The first to be withdrawn was in 1950, and the last in 1959. The 2Ps were a natural progression from the 483s, with larger cylinders, slightly smaller wheels, and a higher boiler pressure, as well as a superheater. With a tractive effort of 17,700 pounds and 6-foot 9-inch driving wheels, I find it easy to believe that they could run up to, and maybe over, 80 miles an hour, but I've got no proof of this. The light 440 was already a bit outdated at the time, but the LMS was running headfirst into old-fashioned designs. If you need proof, look no further than the 4F or the 7F. But Fowler's 2P, as well as the 4P compounds, proved exceptionally capable. They'd all survived straight through the LMS era and into British Railways. The 2Ps, like the 483s, found their home on fast but not necessarily top-of-the-line passenger trains when working alone. But there are several pictures of 2Ps double-heading with larger engines. While I'm hesitant to put pictures up on screen, you'll probably see one here. And you can find several images of 2Ps double-heading with 460s, including one of the pre-rebuilt Royal Scots. So they were commonly used for double-heading, or at least often enough that it was pretty easy to get a picture of it. I believe this would have been a rarer occurrence, maybe covering for a Pacific. By 1932, at the end of the class's 4-year production run, there were 138 of them. While the class wouldn't begin withdrawal until BR days, there were 2 withdrawn in 1934. Numbers 591 and 639 were in a head-on collision at Port Eglinton Junction, while both pulling local services. Both trains' firemen and one of the drivers died in the accident, as well as 6 passengers. The surviving driver and 10 passengers were noted to have severe injuries, while 18 passengers and both guards were carted off to the infirmary for less serious injuries, while many other passengers had minor injuries but did not seek medical treatment. The locomotives were deemed irreparable, and were the first of this class to be withdrawn. After this, the class would lead relatively uneventful lives, with some of them even taking up rail tours while steam was on its way out. The first signs of withdrawal struck in 1954, with 40662 being the only withdrawal. Then, in 1957, the next engine would go. But in 1959, BR would really get to work on withdrawals, taking out 43 from service. Another 10 would go the next year, and in 1961, 66, nearly half of the class's total, would be withdrawn. The last 15 would be taken out of service in 1962. Class as a whole, as well as its first member, number 40563, had a working life of 34 years. Towards the end of their life, many branches, as well as duplicate routes, were being closed or repurposed. Add to the fact that much younger standard designs were being reallocated to their work while diesel power was taking over, the 2Ps were simply outmatched. Simple and reliable they may have been, but they were also old, and even if they had made it to the last days of steam, it would have only brought them another 6 years. None of the 138 examples of this class survived into preservation, and as far as I can see, there's no new build project plans for it. It's not super surprising, honestly. The 2P was never anything special. It was made to be a secondary passenger engine, and that's all it ever was. It's a shame, and I think one would do well on a heritage railway, but there are more eye-catching things already being built, including a handful of 440s. As far as the aesthetics of the engine, I have to admit, I'm a sucker for Fowler designs. I find them quite charming, even if they look a bit old for their time. Maybe that charming look comes from how the smoke box is proportioned, or how the parallel boiler meets that big Belpaire firebox. Maybe it's all the straight lines. But on top of that, the two Ps keep to that design while also looking quite light due to the elevated boiler. I just love it. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm going to put out another video on a steam engine next because I didn't realize the commitment I was making with the diesel shunters project, so we'll see. But I'm in the process of moving, so I'm going to have to keep to short videos for a time. Thanks for being here.